A lot of you saw George's bio on the invite for the event. I'm just going, this is a real casual thing. Everybody's muted out, but you can chat in and ask a question.
Okay, well, first of all, hi everybody, and thanks for tuning in. I've been sailing since I was 8 or 9 years old, started up in Peaks Island in Portland, Maine. Been sailing my whole life, and then I finally retired from my real job and decided to get my master's ticket. So even though I've been doing deliveries and yacht work for years, so I recently got that. I'm just put in for my 200-ton upgrade and my 500-ton mate, and I'm currently the mate on the Oliver Hazard Perry, which is out of Newport, Rhode Island. It's a three-masted, 200-foot, 471-ton square rigger, and we're purely a training ship. So we work with the Navy, the Coast Guard, NOAA. We work with Sea Scouts, different groups, and we do what you'd imagine: sail training, navigation, leadership, technology on board. And I'll be back up there in May, and I spend my winters down here in Florida sailing my boat, which is a 39-foot, do a lot of runs out to the islands, and I do a lot of first-timer new sail training for people that sort of make the mistake of, oh, I'm selling everything I have, I'm taking ASA 102 and I bought a boat. I'm sure you all know somebody like that. So I've ended up finding a little niche where I just sort of work with them for a few days on their boat, and then I'll do the first run out to the islands with them just to hold their hand until they're comfortable. So that's kind of my background. And one of the things that I've noticed is that in the tall ship world and in the big commercial ship world, there's a lot of safety and a lot of documentation and planning and training that goes on that I have not seen in small boats. And I thought maybe today we could sort of take all that big training, all that high-end paperwork and Coast Guard, SOLAS, IMO documentation requirements, and scale it down into something that may have some more value for us on a day-to-day. It might be nice to kind of go through and see where we are and set a baseline for safety. Part of this, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of the documentation you might want to have on board. And I wanted to focus on a document that I created because I'm kind of a safety nut. I've done a lot of safety work for the OHP. And I've created an emergency document, which I've given you the link to, if you guys have looked at it. I'm trying to set up a document and teach my visitors and my crew what to do if I'm the incapacitated person or I've gone over the side, because it's easy for you as a captain. You guys are all obviously sailing your own boats, or you're captains. You know what to do if something happens, but if something happens to you, do your crew and your guests know what to do? And so everybody here, I'm sure, does the basic safety briefings before you have guests on board. Sort of, life jackets are here, the exits are here, 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 and here. Please don't exit the boat while it's underway. Fire extinguishers here and here. But I wanted to make that maybe a little more formal for people, so that you could say, oh, you're going to go sailing with me next week for an afternoon or for 2 weeks or a month to the islands. Let me email you this document. And it tells you where everything is on the boat. It tells you what everything kind of does. It gives you basics for emergencies if I'm the one who's incapacitated, from just simple how to fight a fire, because a lot of people have never been trained on firefighting. Or a lot of people have none or basic first aid and CPR. I get an arm cut off and I'm out cold. I'm going to die if my crew or my guests don't know what to do. So I wanted to put this document together that kind of gets them at least in the right direction. And again, you can't solve all the problems. You can't put loads of documentation and make people go through 4 weeks of training, but you can kind of find a balance point. And everybody's balance point's different. Some people will want a little more, some people want a little less, but this is a nice place to start. If you look at the document that I gave you the link, you can see that I have actually created a don't panic document. Oh my God, what do I do? I'm not the captain. I've never been on a boat before, or I've sailed a couple of times, but now what? So I've kind of broken up primary chunks of an emergency: medical, boats on fire or sinking, taking on water, general bad stuff, and the real man overboard. And I've just kind of said, okay, if something bad happens, here are our first aid kits. We have a full-on EMT kit. We have 2 first aid kits and a first aid primer And some of these documents, like the primer, you'll find some of that on my website under the documents for download. You may have these already. You may have taken classes well beyond this. You might be a medical care provider. You might be a medical care person in charge. I don't know. So I'm just starting at the baseline of I have either no or basic first aid experience because I'm a guest on the boat or I'm first-time crew. Here's kind of where they are. Here's what to do. If you need help, here's how you do a Mayday call, because people start to freak out. They forget. It's all right here. And even down to things like CMI. There's a worldwide organization called CMI. And if you look at the other document that I sent, there's some links for it. You can check it out. It's free. If you have single sideband, you can contact these guys anywhere in the world and they will give you free medical support if you're offshore. In the document that I sent along with this, I also listed all the SAR support services for Mexico, Cuba, the Bahamas, Virgin Islands, all the areas that we as a group might sail in. So they're all listed as well. So something that you could have on board that will help someone who doesn't know what they're doing get at least a foothold of an emergency and know who to contact, step by step, for them to get on the horn and call somebody. So that's what I'm kind of walk through it with you guys. There's for firefighting, I call it buoyancy emergencies, but little holes and big holes, what to do, how to solve the problem, and if we are going down, what you should do if I'm not on the boat anymore. I've gone over the side, I'm incapacitated, I am dead, and you're on your own out there. If it's Stacy, my partner, or if it's a few of your friends that have never dealt with this. So this document and kind of this discussion is to set a baseline, taking a large ship commercial requirement and bringing it down to something that we can manage, that we can use on a daily basis.
I wanted to make an observation. Yeah. This is such great information, and that training that she's talking about, people are going to get on board with you or whatever, you yourself should do it regularly. Do we remember how to turn this on? Do we remember who to call? Do we remember how to do this stuff? It is your own crew training, and your own training, I think, is just as important to go through this document that she's talking about and remind yourselves.
So what my suggestion is, based on this general document, those list of links that I sent you, we can talk about the documentation you should have on the boat for emergencies, muster plan, even on a small boat. What if you're at dock? You have plans for muster if your boat's on fire. All your guests are meandering all over Bimini. Where are they going to meet in an emergency? When you're offshore, it's not so much the muster point as much as it is a crew roster and a station bill, and assigning people, even if it's two of you. Okay, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to get the go bag. I'm going to get the EPIRB. You're going to get the life raft. And have that planned out in advance, so we're not going, what do we do? What do we do? And who does what in that emergency situation? So having a station bill, a muster plan, this sort of a document, having a standardized safety briefing and pulling all this together. And again, it can be very involved. I'm kind of a safety nut, but it can be whatever level that you're comfortable with. And the idea is just to kind of go through these and cherry pick what works for you. Pre-planning, this kind of a document development, having all your insurance, state and federal documentation, certifications, your crew roster. If you travel abroad, make sure you have your FCC license, your ship's station license, a medical eval form, because if you have to do any type of medical work for somebody, everything you do, down to putting a Band-Aid on my finger or stitching it up or any kind of support you're doing, should be documented, because if you don't document it, it didn't happen, because we have to get care from the boat to the shore, and we have to have that care across that boundary safely. So that type of thing, having a simple piece of paper, a couple of pages tucked in your nav station that you can just pull out if you need it. That type of document in advance will help you in the emergency. Even when you bring people on the boat, what I tend to do is get everybody's documentation, passports, whatever, and I don't need to take it. I'm not one of these people that I'm going to hold your passport, but I will write down the passport number and put it on the crew bill. And I'll have a crew list, and I'll say, okay, they're from this country, here's their passport number, here's their emergency contact if something happens to them, so I can deal with that. And I also put that information, not the passport, but the rest of the information on a standard float plan. And I send out a float plan to my sister, to one or two of my guests' husbands or friends, so that that's floating around out there. And I say, if you don't hear from us on a certain date, assume we have a problem and call the Coast Guard. And we check in on a regular basis. Of course, the MARPOL plaques, and then finally having a formatted pre-departure checklist and a sort of a checklist for your safety briefings. So that, I'll just kind of leave it to you guys to ask all sorts of questions.
Georgia, do you ask people to hand you an envelope, a sealed envelope with their medical stuff in it?
I don't. I ask them, do you have any medical issues I need to know about? I will just keep that in mind. But again, it wouldn't hurt if they were to do that. I kind of like that idea, because if I go over the side and there's 6 people on the boat, and the person I delegated to be the first mate and who would become now the captain, because I'm not there anymore, needs to know this as well. So
Absolutely.
I would say that's not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, and if you've got somebody that's got to be airlifted off the boat, to be able to hand an envelope and goes, here who they are, is a great option.
I do that, and what I do also is some of the ladies that sail, I have a certain group that sails with me all the time. Their envelope just stays on my boat, and it's got their insurance, emergency contacts, medication, and it doesn't get opened unless we have to have it. We had a situation where we had a guy on board that didn't tell us he was using lidocaine patches all the time. And it's like, well, we needed to know that.
I think I'm going to incorporate that. I'm going to add that into the rest of my safety stuff, because I think that's a great idea.
I think one of the other things that I take from the flight plan world is we actually go through it. I got it in front of me, because you'll always forget something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, especially the more often you do it, the more likely you are to forget. And so, yeah, I think that, having the stuff written down the way George has done it is such a great way to go. And I always say my top 3 priorities are safety, safety, and safety. And that's really where George is coming from. It's where we are in the tall ship world, and certainly where we are in the Coast Guard world.
And I think I heard somebody had a fire recently.
Several of us. I had a small engine fire, right, Sandy? Angela, who's not on here, had a major fire on board while she was at the dock. I was out, but she was at the dock. And so we have had some experiences with fire, and that's kind of one of the topics I kind of wanted to touch on as well.
Sure. Fighting a fire to me is scarier than fighting a big hole in the boat. I'm not as much worried about a big hole in the boat as I am something catching on fire, and that boat, especially fiberglass, just burning down to the waterline.
Yeah.
So I'm a big firefighting fan. In fact, on my boat, I have 4 extinguishers in the main cabin, 1 in each corner. I have a fire blanket in the galley, and I have buckets with line tucked away up in the cockpit, for seawater if I need it. And they're ABC, and I show everybody on my boat how to use them as part of my pre-flight check plan. Part of my safety briefing is like, this is a fire extinguisher, pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, and pull the handle, because most people just don't even know that level. And I would recommend to everybody who owns a boat, there's, again, going backwards, there's 2 classes I would take. I would take a real medical care provider course, either one of these outdoor, wilderness courses, or the Coast Guard medical care provider, and basic firefighting. Just that basics is something that most people don't know. And so I just make sure that they know how an extinguisher works, where all 4 of them are, how to use a fire blanket, and God help us, worst comes to worst, we can bucket brigade water and dump it down the companionway.
What on the fire blanket? I just got one. I'm assuming that you just throw it on top of whatever's on fire and it will extinguish the fire.
It can extinguish the fire. It may not. What you're trying to do is cut down the oxygen of it. Mm-hmm. So I have mine mounted right above the galley stove on one side, so I can pull the handle and literally pull it right down on top of the thing, and then put my arms down and just smother anything on the like a grease fire or something. But I also have right behind me in the galley is an extinguisher, so I do keep both of those ready.
I want to say one other thing in support of the fire blanket. A lot of people you kind of talk yourself out of grabbing that extinguisher and using it because you know what your boat's going to look like after you do it. And so you might let it go longer than you really should, but a fire blanket, you'll use it, right? Because you know the only thing that's going to get damaged is the fire blanket. And so that's what I like about the fire blanket is you're more likely to use it at the early stage of the fire and not take those extra few seconds to go, well, do I really need to do that thing?
Yeah, you can always get the blanket over it, shove it down, grab the extinguisher, and then stand by if it needs to. And also, you know, where that propane switch is. They know where the cutoff valve is up in the cockpit. Something does, you know, catch, I want to extinguish and remove any possible fuel to that fire. So I want to get rid of that as quickly as I want the oxygen to go away as well.
I have a question. I do man overboard drills periodically, and we don't use a human, but we throw a fender over, so we have to actually retrieve something rather than just talking through it. I have no idea how to practice fire fighting without like just talking about it, you know, like I get all this stuff, but I know that when we have the adrenaline spike and the fear and the chaos, because when it happens, it's the least opportune time. Is there any way to safely practice firefighting?
I would say there's two basic things you can do. One is if you have guests on board, you can take a big piece of paper and write fire, tape it on the wall, and then just go up topside. And then when everybody's kind of not paying attention, look down and go, fire, what are you going to do? And you can grab the extinguisher, walk through the process, except for actually firing off the extinguisher. So you can go through all the motions to that last little bit. You can say, you know, fighting the fire and you're spraying the bottom. You can say, oh, the fire extinguisher that, you know, is empty and it's still firing. What are you going to do now? So that they can focus and learn a little bit about what it's like to have that adrenaline rush going. And then you can go out if you're someplace in a nice little deserted island or even in a marina somewhere, you might be able to make arrangements to have a grill set up and then make them practice with one of your extinguishers that need refills.
We can get St. Pete Fire Department to come out and they did that with us a couple of years ago, and we can get them to come out. The only thing is with them is, as they admitted, they don't have a lot of experience with fires on boats, but you know, when we get through with this, we can most certainly have them come out and do a demonstration for us.
A fire on a boat is normally a very binary thing. You're lucky if you can get it put out, because if it gets out of hand, it's going to get out of hand and really quickly, and then you might as well just get off the boat because you've got, you know, this thing's burnt to the ground. So you've got to react very, very quickly.
I like the idea of like the piece of paper that just the symbolic fire, just to sort of give the adrenaline spike. And have everybody know how to react. I think I'm going to adopt that first and see how it goes from there.
You can always add to it. And, you know, you can set that lineup and have one say, you know, fire, and there's a fire and they got to go down and find the fire. Don't help them. Let them find the extinguisher and tell them to go into the position. Use it properly. Just don't pull the pin.
Another thing too to remember with your fire extinguishers, shake your fire extinguishers up on a regular basis too, because if you don't, they don't really work that well. Mandy, you said you guys use CO2 fire extinguishers?
Yes, we have one CO2 on board and 5 ABCs. We had our water heater catch on fire with charter guests on the boat last month, and we grabbed the CO2 fire extinguisher for that.
I keep all ABCs on mine because I just don't want to have to deal with people that don't know anything about firefighting, decide which extinguisher to use.
I also wanted to put in a plug for when you guys do your man overboard training. You know, it's great to do it with, you know, a fender or a Clorox bottle or whatever. The thing that is actually hardest about man overboard is getting somebody back aboard. A person that weighs 150 or 200 or 250 pounds is actually very, very difficult to get up onto your boat. And so I would absolutely, on a warm day, you guys are in Florida, put somebody over the side and you figure out how you're going to get them back aboard. You know, really do a true man overboard.
Is we do the same man overboard drill as you do. We throw a fender or a seat cushion or something, you know, over the side and we pick it up. But in the past, we've done full man overboard drills where someone has just hopped off the boat. And getting them on the boat, as Pamela said, is the hardest part. And one of the things that we have, if you look in the document that I sent you in the MOB part, I think I put it up here, I don't know. if you can see it. But I have hoist gear. I created a block and tackle from parts, and I've rigged it up so that I can swing the boom over, put a clip on it. My boat has the swim step scoop in the stern, so I can get right down there in the water without having to get in the water, clip it onto my victim, swing them around to the side, and I can hoist them up, and so we can just winch them up. Because Stacy, my partner, she's half my body weight, so there's no way in hell she's getting me on that boat without some sort of technical help.
Yeah, and I think everybody has to remember that when you're in a man overboard, in an actual situation, you're probably in rough seas, you're probably in high seas, you're probably in bad weather, and just trying to pull somebody in it's not going to happen. So listen to Captain Georgia.
The level of safety training and drills you do with your team or your clients, it's completely up to you, and everybody has a different level of comfort. But I would certainly recommend once in a blue moon at least trying one of these with a person in the water.
I have a question for you, Georgia, on that, because I've thought about that. And you're pulling people up. I've heard some horror stories, I don't know if they're true or not, about people, their backs breaking because they were pulled up, it was from the waist. Their backs were broke. They broke their back.
There's two ways that I lift people: from the shoulder pits, the shoulders and up, like a lift with one or two people pulling the person on if I have to pull them onto the boat, or it's with a harness point, with a lift point.
As Georgia mentioned, I'm Coast Guard Auxiliary, so I live very much in the Coast Guard world, and I have a captain's license and so on. And I do want to encourage everybody to really look at this document that she put together. And also, if you haven't had a vessel safety check by your local auxiliary, it is worth doing. Not because you've forgotten something, but you probably have forgotten something, and it really helps to have somebody look at it with you. And just a completely separate pair of eyes coming aboard and going, let's just look at it. Do you have your fire extinguishers? Are they where they need to be? It can be just that one extra level of thinking about things, and they do it for free. And they also are very happy to do training, and either them or your power squadron, who are now called America's Boating Club, they're very happy to do training. And it is the one thing that professional mariners do, is we train all the frickin' time. We're either teaching or in class, and it's what keeps us on our toes. And I think that recreational boaters are really well served by thinking that way too.
Again, your level of safety is your decision, but I would do these drills at least once a season. If you don't do them once a month. And again, you can make them kind of fun. You've got a good crew. You can take turns going in the water and being pulled in, so you can kind of all understand what it's like at both ends of that. We're back. One of the things that springs to mind again is the station bill. When I have 5 or 6 people and we do a run out to the Bahamas, I have a station bill set up and I go through what everybody's going to do. And the nice thing is, they get more into the trip if they feel like they're part of the crew and they're doing something, not just out for the ride.
When you're talking about the station bill, is that in case of an emergency? Like my job was to make sure everybody had life jackets on. Is that what you're talking about?
Who, what, when, and where. It's like, okay, if there's a man overboard, my job is to throw extra stuff over the side, or my job is to hit the MOB button, and or my job is to go to the helm, fire the engine up into idle, and start dropping sails, or whatever your rules are on your boat and your equipment requirements are on your boat. That's crew member 1, crew member 2, crew member 3, crew member 4. That's their job, to get this particular set of equipment. If it's a abandoned ship, you're going to pull the 6-man life raft from up forward. You 2 guys are going to grab the 6 to an 8-man raft out of the stern of our boat. Our other crew member is going to go down below and get our go bag, our EPIRB, our SARTs, VHFs, and we're going to collect all this stuff. At that point, I don't have to do anything and say, prepare to abandon ship, and this just all happens. And then we're just waiting for me to go, okay, we're abandoning ship. And again, I put that in my document because if horrible weather, I go over the side, the boat's sinking, I try to fix it, I get hurt, and my crew has to do this without me. So this document gives them a starting point. And I send this out well in advance. I might send this out a week or two in advance, a month in advance. Just have a copy on the, in the nav station. If there's a casual afternoon sale, I'll say, hey, take a look at this while we're selling. So it gives them a little bit of perspective. For insurance reasons and legal reasons, we're all captains of boats and we have passengers on board. We have crew on board. We occasionally have paid passengers on board, and it's reasonable care we have to take for our passengers and crew. And anything we do like this is it's a point for us when it comes to a lawsuit. You will find on my website, in the support and weather section, there's handy documents and there's just a slew of stuff but feel free, share whatever. It's there,
Okay.
it's there to support and help people. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or give me a yell or anything I can do.
Wanted to thank Georgia for taking some time to do this. And also I wanted to thank everybody for hopping on today. And I really do appreciate